Hi everyone, so in today's video, I'm going to be discussing my July Camp NaNoWriMo plans. Now I know I said I wasn't gonna do 2 videos a week anymore, but I just couldn't resist putting this video out as soon as possible. This is the first camp I've participated in a while, so I'm just so excited to talk to you guys. So the video isn't out yet, but I did film a vlog finishing my 11th novel called Feeding Habits. Now, if you've been following this channel for a while, you'd know that Feeding Habits was basically the main project that I've been working on since 2020. So now that it's done, I feel very free, but I finished it on the last day of June. Literally on June 30th, I finished Feeding Habits. It was my goal to finish it on June 30th, and I did. But with that said, because I was finishing it all through the month of June, I literally didn't even think of camp, like what I was gonna do. I had no idea if I wanted to participate. So I jumped on the camp train at the very last minute. Literally the day before was when I was thinking of what I wanted to write. So this camp is gonna be pretty chill. I've already seen quite a few author-tubers kind of go the like soft goal route. I think I was watching Kate Kavanaugh's video and Becca C. Smith's videos on their goals for July Camp 2022. And mine is going to be kind of similar because now that Feeding Habits is done, celebration, I can work on so many other things, which is really exciting. So here are a couple of the things. So the main thing that I want to work on for the month of July is Seventh Virtue. So if you didn't know, Seventh Virtue is the adult fantasy novel I've been writing since May of 2021. I had to take quite a bit of a large gap from really working on it because if you didn't know, I'm a full-time student. I study creative writing, and when I'm in school, I barely write. So while I did kind of tinker with Seventh Virtue for the 8 months I was in school from September 2021 to April of 2022, I didn't really work on it all that much. So really, I was working with my progress from May 2021 to August 2021 with Seventh Virtue and really nothing else. So I have been dying to get back on a more consistent schedule with working on this project, but because I have had such a long gap of time between working on it, times where I'll write tons, like let's say 10,000 words in just a matter of days, and then for like 3 months not touch it at all, I have become very disoriented with where this project is at, and in general, this is a genre I don't really write. If you didn't know, I started my writing journey when I was really young, and I started out writing young adult dystopian, which was very typical of the times. So I did write genre fiction, but when I was about 16, so just a couple of years ago, I kind of pivoted into literary fiction, and literary fiction is kind of where my heart's been at for the last couple of years. But last year, I decided I wanted to dip back into genre fiction. Best decision ever. I'm so happy now. But with that said, I don't write fantasy. I don't know how fantasy works. I am not a huge fantasy reader. I am changing that now though. I've been reading a lot more fantasy books. So if you have recommendations, let me know. So this is like a fish out of water moment for me. That leads me to my goal for July is to outline Seventh Virtue. If you know me, you'd probably be like, oh wow, what is she doing? Because I'm a pantser. I am very vocally a pantser. I love being a pantser. But I do think pantsers, outliners, we kind of put ourselves into really like harsh boxes, or at least define pantsing and outlining in sort of harsh ways, when in reality, I think there's quite a bit of crossover on either side. So as a pantser, I will be outlining my book. A lot of the work I've sort of already done. I'm going to make a separate vlog of me doing this because it's quite in-depth, but I've been having a really good time re-outlining Seventh Virtue. The manuscript itself is just at about 61,000 words. So a couple of months ago, I went in, like I think when I was at school, and I re-outlined the book in Scrivener. This is also a surprise to me. I'm writing in Scrivener and genre fiction. Wow, these are 2 things I never thought I would do, but that I'm very excited to be doing. I've been like a staunch Word user, but Word is just, I don't like it at all for outlining. And so I decided to purchase Scrivener a couple of months back. So in Scrivener, I outlined each scene, like each chapter. And so I've been using that to create a Save the Cat beat sheet for Seventh Virtue. I kind of already finished that. I worked on it yesterday. Essentially, my goal is not going to be word count based because I am going to be working on several different projects. So I'm not trying to write 50,000 words. So instead, I just kind of took like the NaNoWriMo suggestion was if you wanted to do a time goal, you could just do like 1,800 words for the month, and one word would count as 1 minute of work. I'm hitting a goal of basically 60 minutes a day, aka 60 words a day. I will link my profile if you want to follow my journey, but that's essentially what I've been doing. Yesterday, I achieved my goal above and beyond. I actually really loved the time goals. I did 2 hours, and I think putting it into perspective that I worked 120 minutes solely on my writing has made me feel like, oh wow, I'm a lot more productive than I thought I was. Yesterday, I went through my Scrivener like re-outline of the book. I have about 10 chapters written, and I transferred that into a document outlining basically the Save the Cat beats, aka like the 15-beat plot structure is very popular in screenwriting. I was taught this structure when I was in first year. I will link the video. The creator of Save the Cat did a really great breakdown of it, and I'll link the website that I personally used sort of as the template. I copy and pasted it. I will make a video going through it because I think it would be kind of fun to look at how my pants novel actually fits into basically all of the beats of Save the Cat. Story structure is an interesting thing. As a writing major, I'm a huge geek about story structure. I think it's my favorite aspect of writing. Essentially, the reason why I wanted to do this is because I don't know what beats I've already hit in my book. And when you're writing genre fiction, especially if it's supposed to be commercial fiction, hitting those beats is really important. I wanted to see what beats I'd already hit and essentially what progress I'd made in the book. From that exploration, I realized I actually did a lot more than I thought I did. I've already broken into Act 2 with Seventh Virtue. I'm just saying, for all those people who think that pantsers can't follow story structure, my book that I pantsed with no idea what I was doing fits every single beat really like perfectly. I find I just do it sort of subconsciously. Naturally, like these stories are gonna follow this sort of Western idea of like the hero's journey, which I also studied. So this is very ingrained into my brain, the story structure. So it was fun to like put my book into a story structure and see, okay, I already did that. I don't need to like repeat these beats that I've already covered. That's one of the biggest things I wanted to do this month. It literally took me 2 hours. I'm done now. And so that leads me on to my other goal, is essentially just to outline the rest of the book. Now, I am not a person who likes to follow outlines. And it's not because I don't want to. I really want to follow outlines, but my brain just strays at a certain point when I'm doing an outline. But the thing is, I still want an idea of what will happen in this book because I think I want to write a sequel. And I don't know, I think it's easier for me if I'm in school and I sort of forget things. It'd be easier to have a roadmap, even if I don't end up following it. Now, something you guys might not know about me, because I'm not sure if I vlogged a lot of this back in my earlier days of writing when I was like a younger teenager, I used to do a lot of sort of outlining in this way. I've always considered myself a pantser. I don't consider myself a plantser, 100% just pantser. But check out my videos on misconceptions about pantsing, because one that I think is kind of popular is that like pantsers don't do any planning at all. But when I was a younger teenager, I used to do a lot more of this work where I'd write down my notes or I'd write down a scene list. I have some vlogs actually, I think from when I was like 15, talking about this and sort of doing it. And I kind of want to get back into that because of course that's how I was organizing genre fiction Fostered, and Seventh Virtue is part of a larger series called Fostered. I'll link my whole video on Fostered. It was like an hour long because it's very complicated. So check that out if you don't know what I'm talking about. But because Fostered started out in genre and that was my process with genre fiction, it only makes sense to now sort of go back to that process now that I'm done with sort of the literary side of Fostered. I'd like to outline the entire book. Like I said, I have 10 chapters. I'm currently in Fun and Games, and I've written quite a lot of Fun and Games. So I'm nearing the midpoint. I think midpoint might be at around 70 or 80,000 words for this book. It's going to be a really long book. Of course it's going to be a really long book. It's Fostered. So I'd like to go in and sort of organize the rest of my plot beats because I do have some other notes that I just want to add to my outline so that I have an idea of where I'm going, at least for the midpoint and the ending, and I can kind of fill in the rest. That leads me to another thing I want to do this month is organize my notes. So I will link my video in the description. I filmed it in first year on how I organize my writing documents. It's the exact same. I have not changed that process at all, but in that video I talk about how I take a lot of notes for my books just on my phone, on my like iCloud Notes app. I've always done that, and I only recently, like 2-3 years ago, started organizing them into folders, but I never created a folder for Seventh Virtue. I have a big folder for Fostered, and every miscellaneous Fostered project goes in there. I had one for Mothwork, which was a separate Fostered book, but I don't have one for Seventh Virtue. Yesterday, I made one for Seventh Virtue, and I just went in and I slotted all of the notes I've ever written. about seventh virtue into that new folder. So I've already done some of that work. So now the goal is to get those notes onto my computer and also organize those notes because they're everywhere. I get overwhelmed when there's too much information in places. How I used to organize my notes when I wrote like a lot of genre fiction is I would just paste like the paragraph notes that I'd taken just one after the other into a document, and I would color code them based on a few factors. So if I color coded them red, it's because I put that note into the book and then I never really had to look at that note again because I knew it was already there. Anything I hadn't used would be color coded just in black text, so I knew I could use that information whether it was scene ideas or dialogue, and anything that ended up not being in the book at all that I just ended up like wanting to cut out or like, you know, it's not going to be relevant anymore, I color coded purple. So I'm going to do the same thing with the notes, and then from there I'm going to compile a scene list. So that's my next goal of all of the remaining scenes that I want to write. The scene list is then going to allow me to finish the outline. So I'm just going to use Save the Cat to outline it. I'm not really going to know scene by scene. I just want to know the beats. And so that's basically how I'm going to outline the rest of Seventh Virtue. A lot of it's already written. So really it's just sort of like the roadmap to the end. I also wanted to add points of view to this book. So I don't know, maybe I'll figure that out this month if I still want to do it, because it's kind of a big task. But if I do, like, I think the book will be even cooler. So like, I don't know if I should do it. And sort of the final thing I want to do with Seventh Virtue for this month is straighten out the magic system. Magic systems are probably the most overwhelming thing about writing this book. I don't do well with world building, but the magic system in particular is hard. I constantly forget, even though I've already figured out the magic system, I constantly forget what it is. I forget who has what powers, how the powers even came to be, like the rules of the magic. I don't know anything. I find it overwhelming. So I just want to spend a couple of days just going through the magic system, really straightening it out, because right now I've just like been bullshitting the magic system. But I want to create like some hard rules for this magic system. It'll make my life so much easier. Something else that I've already also been working on that I could also tinker with this month, but it might be less of a priority, is character profiles. Check out my video where I already started creating character profiles for all the characters in Seventh Virtue. I'm not a huge character profiles person, but really in the character profiles, it would be great if I could just note who the character is, like what roost they're in, like what family they belong to, what if they have a power, what it is. That would be great, but if I don't get to it, that's not a big deal. The other things that I want to do for camp this month are unrelated to Seventh Virtue. So I wrote the first chapter of a literary fiction novel called The Sun Only Drowns Us. I hate that title. I will change it. I hate that title. But anyway, I wrote that for a workshop and I want to revise it because there's a mentorship I want to apply to. The application is due in 6 days and I haven't started on the revision. But that's like, should be my priority instead of like re-outlining Seventh Virtue. But honestly, I'm so reluctant to do the revision, but I know a majority of my time in at least the next 6 days. So, you know, the first week of camp is going to be occupied doing this revision with The Sun Only Drowns Us. I had it workshopped, so I kind of already have an idea of what I want to do, but I think I'll make a video on that because I already have an idea on how I will go about revising it. Because if you're like me, developmental edits are so overwhelming and terrifying. I'd like to share like sort of my process. Lastly, the other two random things I want to do this month are work on short stories and poems. I'm going to my final year of university. I need to get back into the swing of things with writing short stories and poems. Lastly, I think for my goal, which is going to be, of course, the 60 minutes every single day, I might also include reading. I struggle with reading really, really quickly, but it's an important part of my process, especially when I'm writing Seventh Virtue. Like, I like to see what other genre writers do because I'm really new to the genre. And I also have a whole bunch of books that I really want to finish. So I think I'm going to include reading in the writing time because it's important to the process and it'll motivate me more to read. So that's basically what I'm going to be doing this month. It's really exciting. I'm not really setting anything in stone. What are you working on for camp? This is such an exciting time for me. Like, I just jumped on the bandwagon really, really late because I didn't really have much time to figure out whether or not I wanted to join when I was finishing up Feeding Habits. So now that we're here, I'm so excited. And be sure to check out my profile if you want to be my buddy. But for now, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in another video. Bye.